know why my screen is all screwed up, but
You look good.
oh, thank you. I have a new monitor and I'm trying to get used to it. It's pretty big. All right, we ready? We're recording, correct? John?
Yes, sir. Yep, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call to order the board meeting of the Palmyra Area School District for November 12th, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Darcy, roll call, please.
Hey, Barley.
Here.
Connell.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Geib.
Here.
Gilligan.
Here.
Kreiser.
Here.
Ludwig K. Ludwig M. Putt.
Here.
Okay, next item on the agenda is board minutes. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the board meeting of October 22nd, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Putt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kreiser. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the treasurer's report. So I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Putt.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to make the motion to approve the treasurer's report for October 2020.
I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report for October 2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gilligan. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Could I don't have any issues or questions about any of the actual numbers, just Darcy. And we have, we have finance committee later tonight. I'll ask them. My apologies.
If it's any questions about revenue or cash flow.
It is. So I'll save it. I apologize.
Nope, that's okay.
Okay, hold on just a second. Oh. Sorry about that. I'm struggling here. Okay. I just can't get used to this yet. All right. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is the president's report. So I do have two things to talk about. The first thing, it's a good thing, and I don't know if everybody could see that, but I was actually flocked by the PHS Minithon. And this was anonymous, and I can't imagine who did it, but I have my ideas. But what a great thing. I was pleasantly surprised when I pulled up to my house and saw all these flamingos all over the front lawn. I just thought it was really cool and very well done. I don't think I really heard about this until I actually saw it, but awesome. So I just wanted to mention that. The second thing, a little more serious point here. So this evening at 3:56 p.m., Dr. Kepler received written resignations from school board directors Karen Ludwig and Mike Ludwig. Due to the timings of these resignations, they are not on this evening's agenda. The board will act upon the accepting of the resignations at the Thursday, November 19th, regularly scheduled board meeting. Once the board resignations are accepted, The board has 30 calendar days to appoint 2 new board members. The associated timeline lends itself to a December 17th, 2020 appointment for the 2 board members. The associated appointments will fulfill the board seats until December 2021. It is understood that both seats will be on the May 2021 primary ballot and the November 2021 general election. The district administration will, in the days ahead, provide communication to our community on how the board will handle the process to appoint 2 citizens to the Board of School Directors.
Mr. Connell, may I ask a quick question on your report?
Sure.
So having just heard about this, I'm trying to listen to the dates that you gave. I'm assuming the letters aren't, I mean, because 30 days from when we'd act on it, I assume these are effective now, like not effective. There was no date given other than just right now. Because if we're going to talk about it later tonight, this isn't a future date. I'm probably sounding dumb. I'm just, did they say like 2 weeks from now? Our resignations are effective. Is there any, I mean, how's that work?
The communication specified resigning effective today, November 12th. Since 4 o'clock, I did have time to speak with our solicitor, and the 30-day timeline begins when the board accepts those resignations. So hence why it's important too, based on timeline of the agenda already being published, pushes us to accept them next Thursday, November 19th, which then the regularly scheduled meeting of December 17th would fall within that 30-day window.
Okay.
It would not be my recommendation to try to move that through it and get that accomplished by December 3rd with Thanksgiving. I just don't think it gives you, the board, ample time to, in our community, ample time to submit their letters of interest.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. With that said, we'll move on to visitor comments. So we have 2 visitor comments for this evening. So Mr. Craig, would you kindly say hi so we can make sure we can see and or hear you, or more importantly, hear you?
Yes, this is Brian. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brian. Okay, Brian, you have the floor. You're the 2 speakers we have tonight. Yourself and Candace are very aware of the rules, so I don't have to go over them. So you have the floor, so the clock starts now.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to express my, I guess, shock and best wishes to the Ludwigs. I know they were I'm here to talk about Veterans Day and veterans issues today, and they were both in the military, and I appreciate their service to this district and to our country. And then I would just want to thank all you folks for taking the time to listen to me and to talk to me this evening. First, I wanted to ask a question, if that was okay. What did Palmyra School District do, if anything, to celebrate Veterans Day yesterday? Is anybody aware of anything? Because I know I'm not.
I'm happy to address that. As this year we made a change in our district calendar, feeling that having school on Veterans Day, usually that Monday of Veterans Day celebrated, school was not in session. We felt that, again, going back 12 months ago, having school for Veterans Day and doing programming would be more beneficial for our students to learn about Veterans Day and appreciate the service to our country from our veterans. With COVID, obviously, many of those plans were placed on hold. I mean, we were looking at partnering with our 2 local legions, VFW, to do programming and have veterans in. And again, with the pandemic, we just did not do that. Middle school and high school, we had special announcements from principals in each of those buildings, speaking to our students about veterans and the sacrifices that our veterans have made. And then in various social studies courses, time was taken to speak to the topic of veterans. So,
Okay, well, I appreciate that, what was done. I do appreciate that. I will be quite honest, I had my kid stay home with us. I feel like, having been away from my kids for 7 months last year, deployed to the Middle East, I enjoy spending Veterans Day with them, talking to them about what it means to serve your country, and taking them out to eat, taking them out to the store or something, and seeing the signs and having people say thank you for your service. And I tell them that I appreciate the sacrifices that they've made as well. I know that I spoke with some of our school board members a couple of years ago, and mentioned that I thought it would be great if we could have off on Veterans Day, or if the kids could have off on Veterans Day, because there are so many opportunities for kids to volunteer, learn, visit family members, volunteer in the community with veterans organizations or organizations that are supporting veterans. I know there was a big event yesterday in Lebanon where people could come and have signs with veterans driving through and that sort of thing. And I know that we have plenty of days, the rest of the year around, Thanksgiving or Easter, where we have a week off of school. I feel like this is an important holiday that we should take to honor veterans who have sacrificed, and honor the families of those veterans who have sacrificed. And I feel like we need to consider making that a holiday for the kids in Palmyra once again. I think it's a little bit to ask with all the veterans that we do have in our community, and it would mean a lot to me as a veteran, and I'm sure it would mean a lot to a lot of other people in our community as well. I kind of running out of words. This is an emotional thing for me. I think it's really important. We celebrate Labor Day, Columbus Day, a lot of other days in our school, and veterans there's hundreds of thousands of them in our community, and it's really important to celebrate them. And if our school is going to do something serious to support veterans, or I understand going to school, but I think it's also important, even if we do have school on that day, to maybe allow kids who come from military families or who want to serve in the community to be able to do that. So I won't take up any more time. I just appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for your service as well.
And I would say, Mr. Craig, thank you as well. This is something that we took up as a board a couple of years ago, and did have Veterans Day as a holiday on the calendar. I certainly was a proponent for that. A lot of us on the board here were as well. And I'm hopeful that once we get past this strange time that we're in with this pandemic, which I think had as much to do with the things we had to try to do and some of the hard choices with the school calendar than anything else. I certainly respect, and I think you did a great thing for you and your family. I certainly support and appreciate anyone who would do those sorts of activities with their family in remembrance of that day. And again, I do think it's something that our board will take a hard look at. Just this year, we had some real struggles and tough decisions to make, given some of the limits that we had with the hybrid schedule and all the things that are going on with the COVID situation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I would echo the event you spoke of in Lebanon. We did have our Key Club members attend that event. So about 30 of our high school students elected to attend that event on behalf of the Key Club. And certainly, I want to just make certain that absolutely no disrespect meant for our veterans. My father, a veteran of the Vietnam War, and certainly no respect. We just felt, I wish all families took Veterans Day as seriously as you and your family, as we just wanted to try to emphasize it in an educational setting, but certainly willing to revisit that with our board as we develop future calendars. Thank you.
Okay, next visitor comment is Candace Hurley. Candace, can you say hi?
Good evening.
There you are. Okay, Candace, you have the floor.
All right, I'm looking for my video. All right, can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see me, so I don't know what I look like. I hope I'm in the center there. First, I'd like to say good evening, and I hope that everybody is healthy and well, especially with the cases of COVID rising, especially around us. Before I say what I came to say tonight, I would like to give a different point of view than Mr. Craig. I too am retired military. I am retired. I'm not currently serving. I don't know if Mr. Craig is currently serving or retired because he said he was deployed, but I've been retired for a couple of years and I take a different stance. There are many families who don't celebrate or know really anything about Veterans Day. And so my mom even asked me why my kids were in school because I come from a military family. And I told her last night when we were talking that I think it's a good thing. Now, I personally went from restaurant to restaurant and got all my free meals yesterday. It was really good, ended with some free blizzards. But as far as children, my child was one of the ones that went with Key Club and made a poster and volunteered with her Key Club to go over to the event, which I didn't know anything about until she told me. And I will tell you that kids, Veterans Day is an important day. And if there are parents who feel that they have something to do that day with their child, then they can request an educational trip, and that's what they're there for, because not everybody has the exposure that kids who are in the military do. And so I think that it's a key opportunity that members who are not exposed to that, their children may miss that opportunity if they're not in school. So I would just give you the flip side coin of that sense. That's a day that I hold dear as well. The reason that I come tonight, though, is because, as before, sorry that I missed my opportunity at the last meeting, but I just wanted to say thank you. In this past week, 2 weeks, this past pay period, I have worked 8 days, I think it is. I've worked maybe 2 days as an aide, and the rest of the days as a sub teacher getting pulled to wherever was needed. I think that the communication, I am thankful for the communication that's coming from Bernie Kepler and his team, that about COVID cases, about absences, about any ongoings that are in the school. I am thankful that we have middle school principals that take the time to make phone calls at night, even as late as 9 p.m. to try and fill last minute holes in the staffing so that they can fill a classroom. I am thankful for the parents that are volunteering their time. And I'm thankful for really just this community coming together and making our school district a wonderful place for my kids to attend. And I'm thankful. So thank you for that. I have kids in the high school and in the middle school and in an elementary school. I have been fortunate to sub in both the middle school and several of the elementary schools. And I have seen the extra cleaning that's going on, the extra planning that's going on. As an aide, I've done a lot of the little tasks that the teachers need to be done in order to get their classes ready. And so I applaud you and I thank you. My call tonight is for the community that is listening to tell your friends to please volunteer for the school and to please donate to your parent-teacher organizations. Right now, with this unprecedented pandemic and not knowing where we are headed to, funds are low, working hands are low, and we need more. So if you can find some time to go into the schools, get your clearances on file, and just volunteer a day a week or so, that would help fill a void for some of the aides that are missing, or you can't fill in for a teacher, but you could fill in as a monitor. You could fill in the lunchroom. In between each class that eats, we wipe the tables down. So there's a lot of different things that can be done. And so volunteers and even just filling out an application to be an aide at the school, while it seems daunting, it's really not that hard. And all you need is a high school education. The last thing that I would say is for the parents that we tend to have a few parents that like to complain all the time. Tell your friends to just talk to their school administrators, talk to the board. I really feel I'm very comfortable. I'm very thankful for the feeling that I get that this school district listens to its community. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the Ludwigs for serving, but I'm really glad those 2 seats are now open. So thank you for what you guys are doing on the board. Thank you for the Friday afternoons for the teachers. Thank you for the football games on Friday nights. Thank you for the opportunities that my children have to learn about veterans and other things going on. And that's really all I wanted to say tonight.
Thank you, Candace. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is curriculum. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee met on October 22nd, and Dr. Spagnuolo provided the board with a 2021 data review. She also provided the board with student data, as noted. Dr. Spagnuolo provided the board with 2020 Cougar Academy enrollment numbers. And she informed the board that the district's flexible instructional day application received final approval by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. As far as public comments, Dave Laudermilk asked questions about catch-up time in English and the future for the Cougar Academy. And the meeting adjourned at 7 p.m. I do not have any motions this evening from the curriculum committee. So our next meeting of the curriculum committee is scheduled for Thursday, November 19th at 6 p.m. in the regular board meeting in the district office room, to be held virtually if necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Sure.
Moving on to staffing and administration, Mr. Guy.
Thank you. Staffing and administration met on October 22nd, 2020. We had the first reading of board policies 203, 203.1, and 210. We had the dashboard presentation by Darcy Brenner Smith. And there was no, yes, there was some public comment, Dave Laudermilk. The meeting adjourned at 7:40 p.m. And out of that meeting, the following motions. A motion to approve the first reading of the following board policies: policy 203, 203.1, and 210.
I have a motion to approve the first reading of the following board policies: policy 203, policy 203.1, and policy 210. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Putt. Any questions, comments, or concerns on this first reading? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, a motion to approve the staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administration consent agenda. Again, Dr. Kepler, I'm going to turn it over to you for any comments you feel are necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Guide. You'll see professional staff hires, some long-term substitutes to fill various leaves that are forthcoming. So we're pleased with those folks that we're bringing on board. Some of these folks are already serving in classrooms for us and finishing up one position and moving into a new opening. An associated mentor, item 3 there. Support staff hire at item 4. These 2 resignations, just Pam Hull was here for quite a few years, and just kudos to her as she is moving into the world of teacher. So we congratulate her on that next step in her career. And then we add some additional substitutes joining our staff from teaching to an additional nurse substitute. Item 7 in the area of athletics, see 2 new hires in the girls basketball program are recommended tonight. Chelsea Ebersol, a graduate of Palmyra, and Amanda Mullen with a basketball previous coaching experience and current AAU coach. And you see various special sick leave approvals that allow those individuals to meet PCER's requirements for those leaves.
Dr. Kepler, the 7th grade girls coach is still Coach O'Connor?
Great question. Off the top of my head, Mr. Kreiser, those winter coaches were previously approved. I would have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, and I only asked because I guess my recollection's a little fuzzy. I wasn't sure if they were both still open.
Mr. Popejoy is coming to my rescue and saying yes. Kelly O'Connor is
Okay.
serving that.
Sorry about that. I thought it was, but again, I didn't remember specifically, so I just wasn't sure if they were both still open or not. So thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve the Staffing and Administration Committee items as noted on the Staffing and Administration consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kreiser. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, I heard Mr. Kreiser
Second.
and Mr. Putt second. Any questions, comments, or concerns for the good of the cause? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and we're adjourned. Okay, we will move into our,
Buildings and grounds?
what's that?
Buildings and grounds?
Whatever's next, which is.
Buildings and grounds.
Yep, 7 o'clock.
You may want to make your speech about raising your hand before we get to the final agenda item of public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing.
If anybody wants to raise their hand for public comment, otherwise I just say, Mr. Heath Dresch and Kim and the whole team doing a great job. To our custodial staff and workers, we can't thank you all enough for the awesome job that you're doing. Everything behind the scenes, something nobody sees and often recognizes and appreciates, but I'll gladly take the time and my opportunity as this role of chairing this committee to thank all those custodial staff for just amazing work. Again, all behind the scenes, don't get much accolades, but thank you for what you're doing, particularly during these very tough times.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kreiser. So we'll move on to Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir. Our first is debt service. Darcy.
All right. Shows our debt service schedule for the budget for 21-22. That is going up by $250,000 from the current year, and that is as we had planned it when we had borrowed for the middle school project and the other renovations projects. So this is the last year that we have an increase as we phase that in so that we could phase it in with the millage impact. The following year will actually drop and then level out the rest of our projected debt service schedule. So that is, like I said, the expenditure side of that is going up $250,000. We do get on the revenue side, we get state reimbursement of $824,000 and federal reimbursement of $672,000.
But again, I think the key, Darcy, for us and for everybody to be aware, all numbers that are presented there are as expected with your long-term projections and plan from a
Yep.
debt perspective.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, these have been reflected in the past 5+ years of long-range projections.
So next is revenues.
Yeah, hard to believe we're projecting revenues now for 21-22, but our budget timeline has us presenting a preliminary budget, having a preliminary budget by December 10th and presenting that publicly at the December 17th board meeting. Normally when I'd go over, if you'll indulge me, since this is the only agenda item tonight between buildings and grounds and finance, I am going to spend a little more time and I am going to go line by line. Normally in the past, I mean, I've got, keep the trends and have very, very consistent trends to follow in the past. And typically this presentation, I would give you some bullet points of what assumptions I've been using. But I think this year and the challenges this year with the economy, I think it just bears having a little bit more conversation about some of these line items and, give me a chance to point out to you where I don't have a crystal ball and, turnaround and economic recovery could cause, and the speed of that could cause some pretty big fluctuations in our revenues. So kind of just set the stage with that. Dr. Kepler, you have history on this spreadsheet. You have history of 5 years of actual, but just for ease of going through this, we're just going to take a look at the actual for 1920. What we budgeted for 2021, we're looking at columns H, I is the current year budget. J is where I've gone through and, with being 4 months into the school year, knowing all our subsidies to date, what I'm estimating to date for the budget. And then take a look at some ranges of what type of growth potential do we have for for these line items for the 21-22 budget. So the first one, the biggest one by far, 31.2 million out of a $55 million budget. I'm estimating 31,270,000. I've increased this by $300,000. When we prepared the budget last year, this line item was reduced from preliminary by $600,000. And I know at the time, I believe it was Jim that had asked questions, what does that $600,000 cut represent? Is it growth? Is it collections? And my response was, it is a combination of things. And I also had made the comment that I just reduced 5 or 6 line items, the big line items in this budget. I didn't go through and hit some of the smaller line items that we know are taking a hit. And as you'll see later, like admissions to sporting events, rental of facilities. This is a more fine-tuned, that was kind of a large hit. Where we are right now, our discount period for collections runs through August 31st for taxpayers that take advantage of getting a 2% discount, and then paying at face value if you pay by October 31st. So we know the collections at this point through October 31st. And taking a look at that, we're off by about 125,000, about 0.5%. So that gave me enough confidence to add $300,000 back out of the 600. I still want to see, I think common sense tells us that people who would typically pay delinquent might default at a higher rate. So we'll know by the end of December, but right now our collections are off by about 0.5% compared to where we would expect that to be. So I have increased that line item, that estimated line item.
And so Darcy, I'm going to interrupt you and I apologize.
No, I'd like you to interrupt me as we go line by line rather than wait till the end. I think it'll flow better.
Yeah. So first off, column L.
Mm-hmm.
Is column L meant to say 1920 estimated rationale?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that should say 2021.
Or 2122?
No, no, that should be 2021. That's my notes just my notes of comments of what I did to change estimates for the current year.
Okay, gotcha.
And then then column N and O are a kind of a worst case to a best case, a range for 21-22.
Okay, so we're saying not looking to 21-22 to pick up 300,000. We think based on where you're seeing a trend come in here, end of October, picking up another 300,000 over our prior estimate for this current year.
Right. Yeah. If you look at the budget's the 30,972,000, and I'm now estimating 31,270.
Right. Okay.
Column L is referencing variations from budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just had a year where I wasn't sure if it was part of her assumption as to building last year's budget or part of where we're at right now.
Yep. It's that. Those are my comments for this year.
Gotcha. Okay.
Darcy, how are we picking up 1.8 million?
Okay, then the next, looking ahead to 21-22, the worst case, if we just look at what I'm projecting, just natural growth, no tax increase, I'm estimating $159,000 in natural growth. I'm only seeing that our natural growth will be about 0.5%. Our trend has been 1% per year. We're behind trend already year to date. And last year at this time, we already knew that $4.5 million was coming on the tax rolls for the corrugated paper factory. There's just nothing out there. No large commercial properties coming on the tax rolls. So with just real estate growth, and last year our actual growth even fell a little bit below 1%, and we're lagging behind in residential growth by a couple $1 million in additions. So I'm projecting that natural growth at 0.5%, we would see that line item grow by 159,000. And then the maximum would be what the maximum tax increase with the 3.8% index and the one exception that we qualify for special ed. And then you add that natural growth in too, would be 1,834,000. The index, the 3.8% tax increase at index generates about 1.2 million. And then we qualify for an exception if you choose to apply for that for special ed increases at a much higher rate than our index. Another 470,000. So if you the 1.2 million, a 5.27% tax increase would generate 1,675,000 plus the natural growth would bring in additional 1,834,000. And again, then we do also need to continue to watch where collections end up. I mean, we're only 4 months in to collections. All right.
Sorry, Darcy. So how soon do you think that you're going to have a better idea of where collections are going to come in for this year?
January, because the next cutoff. Right now, the deadline passed to pay taxes at the face value. So The next deadline is to pay by December 31st. before it
Okay.
gets turned over for delinquent collections to the county. So we'll know like 2 weeks into January, we have to certify delinquent, and we'll know what if we hit our collection percentage.
Okay.
Right? Okay with moving on?
Mhm.
Interim real estate taxes, we had budgeted based on trend, that this was not a line item that we adjusted for the pandemic. With that slowed growth rate, I mean, these interim taxes are what we collect for properties that come on the tax roll throughout the year. Say a property comes on in the middle of the year, we collect taxes for half a year. So that's what that represents. And with the growth rate slowing, I think that line item will be impacted. And you know, whether or not that picks up and grows, you know, at a faster rate the following year, that's where it's tough to project.
Well, and I think looking at trend, Darcy, we've overestimated that line
Oh,
2-3
that
years
would
in
have
a
been
row.
one.
So we probably need to go ahead and look at a pretty significantly decreased range for that for next year, just given trend.
Right. Yeah, these are some of the smaller line items where, you know, you'll probably see 7 or 8 line items where I didn't go in and adjust these because I hit real estate taxes and adjusted by 600,000, adjusted,
Right.
you know, earned income tax. So I knew these were ones that would take a hit, but maybe it's just the way my brain works. It was easier for me to track these and see, you know, what versus a normal budget. Next 2 line items are very stable. Public realty, that I don't see any changes there, and payment in lieu of taxes. The public realty, we get a share of utilities that pay taxes in other in our district, and then the in lieu of those are properties like state game lands or the Interfaith Manor, where there were negotiated agreements that they make a payment in lieu of taxes. Per capita taxes, I scaled back a little, but they're, you know, I think they're fairly stable. The next 2 line items, that's the $10 tax, per capita tax, and we're required by law to show it in 2 pieces. And I don't really see much potential for growth there either. Next line item is earned income tax, which out of any line item in the budget, I think this is the most sensitive to the economy because it's directly related to earned income, and any of our residents who are unemployed don't pay earned income tax on unemployment. We reduced this line item, cut this line item by 17% from the preliminary budget. The preliminary budget had a 3% growth rate built into it. We had a very very steady trend of 3 to 4% growth in this line item. What I'm seeing now year to date is that our collections are down from last year by 13%. So if you figure, you know, I cut 17%, I cut that 3% out that was in the preliminary budget, and we're down 13% from last year. We're pretty much, you know, right tracking with that 17% reduction from preliminary last year. We did end the year a little bit higher, so I did increase it just to reflect where we came in last year. And then here's where I you know, how quickly will the economy turn around? Can we project that next year it'll grow at a rate of 1 to 3%? I'd like to be optimistic that it will. But I'm not expecting any any good data for really for another 3 months. I mean, I know that line item took a big hit if you go back and look at the actual of the 3,771,000. And, you know, if you go back and look at those actuals, you can see that nice steady trend we had going. I, you know, was able to very reliably build in, you know, $200,000, $150,000 to $200,000 a year.
Basically, Lennon, from 5 years ago.
Yeah, but you know, the first week of November is a big collection week because it's a quarter, and you know, so I can look year to date where we are through the first 2 weeks of November, and we're clearly down by 13% from last year, and that's with no growth.
Or should we even be planning on what you have listed there? I mean, we should be, I mean,
the 3.2 million, that does reflect a 13% decrease from last year, which is what we're at year to date. But I think, you know, just you're going to be comparing to numbers last year, which was a very strong 2019. You know, companies, employees that would have received bonuses in December. I don't see, you know, I see that falling off in the next quarter.
Yeah, the good news is it's $95,000, forecasted to be $95,000 over budget. Bad news is it's a 13% decrease.
right.
Very significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable trying to restore that back to what it was in the budget for 21-22.
No, yeah, I mean, do you expect to be flat at 3.2, or you? I mean, where are you comfortable putting it for next year?
I don't feel comfortable that I've got that crystal ball at this point. I think you know, I'd like to defer until some, you know, more projections come out, get another quarter of actual data.
So for us having to put together a preliminary budget by, what was it, December 10th?
Yeah, I mean, I'm, you know, this 1% to 3% range is probably the most, without any more data, I'm not really comfortable going a lot higher. I mean, it's tough. I know that these decisions we make going forward affect programs.
If there's going to be one constant, I think it's going to be a lot of unknown, particularly January to March, the first quarter of calendar year 21. You know, we're hearing as the potential of volatility in the financial world. That I think that we're going to need to try to keep options open from a budget perspective through to April, May, June.
Okay.
Next line item, real estate transfer tax. I've added 75,000 to that. We had a very, very strong first quarter, and even the most recent the collections for October. I've certainly seen that turn around. That it's, you know, right now we're even slightly ahead of where we were last year at this time for real estate transfer taxes. So that's a bright spot. Delinquent real estate, I actually would have expected to reduce that a bit, that any taxes that are already delinquent, those taxpayers would struggle to pay that, but we got a lump sum of $76,000 for the sale. There were 3-4 years of back taxes owed on the hometown restaurant, and with that property selling, we got a one-time payment there. Otherwise, I probably would have reduced that line item a bit. And I have the comment for 21-22 about timing differences. When it comes down to it, we essentially collect 99.9% of the real estate taxes we bill. So, you know, if collections are down this year, they may be collected in a subsequent year. So sometimes that, you know, you can see that real estate taxes are down, but then the following year, delinquent real estate collections can be higher when a trend changes. So that's important to note as well. Delinquent per capita taxes, that I don't see much of a change there. I know that if you look back at actual, there were some pretty high collections. That was some efforts by Keystone to really clean up the tax rolls, and I think they probably collected more than a normal year in that year. Interest income, I don't see rates going up at all. So I don't see that as getting back to, when you look at last year's actual was 289,000. This year we're budgeting 45,000. If you go back to the year before that, I think actual was 500,000. I mean, that's been a huge loss to our budget, seeing interest rates go down like they have.
But Darcy, I mean, is that purely interest rates, or is that also a combination of us drawing down on the unallocated fund balance?
And I'd say it's a lot more.
Our principal base is not nearly what it was then either.
Yeah, I'd say it's more interest rates. I mean, right now we have 30 million in.
So interest rates would have dropped by 1,000 basis points from 19 actual of 530 to now at 45. They didn't drop that far.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's a factor of 10.
Mm-hmm. I went back to, you know, when rates were as low as they are now. Back to 15, 16.
I'm not looking at 15, 16. We're saying in 19, 20,
Mm-hmm.
we budgeted $500,000.
Correct. Based on actual, the previous year was 506. I mean, we'll continue to fine tune those, but we're not earning much.
No, absolutely. I'm just trying to get an understanding of, and I'll do some lookups. I just don't know that in 2 years rates have gone down, but not from 3. Again, it's a factor of 10, 1,000 basis points in there. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of, again, I'm not questioning some of its rates. I'm questioning how much of it also has to do with a drawdown of the fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what we earn the interest on, right? Our cash.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll get, I mean, usually, oops, it's my light. In the next month or two, we'll work with cash management and get more fine-tuned estimates there. But last year we still had a lot more rates. We had a lot more locked in early on in the year, where we were still taking advantage of higher rates, more like 2.5.
But even then, and I still can't get my hands around this. How do you go from a $500,000 to 45,000? So even if you were at 2.5% or even 5%, it basically has to be negative to go down that much, wouldn't it?
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
It just, and the only thing I can think of, Darcy, is what made in 1920 or 1819 make that number go so high? Right, because
Yeah,
1819, 1920, you're talking a significant amount of interest income there.
Even 16 to 17, even 16, 17 to 17, 18, it went from 50 to 266.
Right.
I think if you back up one more line there, Bernie, if you go back one more, there you go. So 40 to 89 to 266 to 506 in 4 years, it, 5 times.
I'll lay out some history for you and pull something together. It's not a line item I've done a lot of fine tuning on yet for this year.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just looking it up quickly, Darcy. I'm just trying to get a sense of the mix there. I know the rates have dropped,
Okay.
but I mean,
Yeah,
if you just look at the 2-year or 10-year and where they've gone from 17 to today, you're
Yeah.
going from 3% down to 1.25%.
Yeah, well,
So
let me pull our,
that's an interest rate reduction of half, not 10 times.
yeah, and just keep in mind that we invest in some of the, the safest investments there are and not very, just a second, I'm pulling up the treasurer's report as we speak to look at the rates where we are. Our CDs, 0.14%. I mean, we were getting closer to, I think like 2.5, anywhere from 2.5 to 2.75 for that entire year back to 1819. And then we've got T-bills in there where the interest rates are 0.05% or 0.02%. And we're earning, it's negligible what we're earning. Again, again, though we are in the safest investments.
Right.
We're ready to move on.
Yep.
Gate receipts. This was another one that, we certainly would have expected it to go down when I mentioned, I didn't nickel and dime and hit lots of the smaller line items. With where we are with attendance limits, I cut that back to 20,000 for this year. And that I don't know if that's too aggressive, we have more to discuss this evening on what winter sports would look like.
That might be even a bit of an overestimation.
Mm-hmm. Athletic activity fee, we did raise the rate this year, but I've seen that those numbers are down somewhat with a decline in participation. IDEA pass-through, that's federal money that's passed through the intermediate unit to us. That's very stable. You can see that budgeted 715,000. That number is known right now, about 710,000, but it doesn't increase. I don't expect it to go up a lot in a future year. Rentals of our facility, budgeted 40,000. That had been a trend that we increased somewhat because of our new turf complex. Our rentals right now are minimal. So what I have budgeted are things that we know about for the baseball fields.
I imagine, Darcy, that's another one that we think would go up as well
If we return,
circumstances and restrictions and things change.
absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Donation from private sources, budgeted 212,000. That numbers are solid with where, you know, this includes money that's been being fundraised for outdoor ed, all of the sponsorships for the turf field that have come in and that the foundation has been paying to us. The only reason I reduced that by 20,000 is because we typically have money that comes in that's a fundraising for the Pats Cubs, our summer program. That was not held this summer. And we also have the savings on the expenditure side. So, but other than that, I think our donation of private sources, that revenue line item looks very solid. Sale of fixed assets, continuing to work with John Brocker on this number. I think there might be some revisions. We had budgeted 135,000, but with our changes in our expanded online instruction, we need to keep some of these assets and not sell them. So we're only projecting sales of 53,000 for this year. But with the cycle we're on, could see that go up to 130,000. I mean, go up by 130,000 the following year. So I'm reducing it for this year, but see that line item picking up and growing a bit higher in 21-22.
We would also anticipate, Darcy, if I'm not mistaken, that the expenditure side would likely have to pick up on that as well to replace some of that hardware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to stay to our schedule. Next line item, tuition patrons. Those are things we collect, different fees. Reduced that by 30,000. By 30,000 from the budget, or I said 35,000, I reduced it by 30. We made the decision in the fall to adjust lab fees to 50%, so that certainly impacts that line item. We didn't make any decision yet for second semester. Tuition, other LEAs, the next line item, reduced that by 60,000. The year before, we had 4 or 5 students from other districts in our special ed classes. It's a great way to pick up income and help neighboring districts and make sure that the classes we're offering are fully at full capacity. But we only had 2 students from other districts in our special ed classes this year. Next line item, the miscellaneous income. I might reduce the estimate this year by 20,000. We would typically have more money coming in, energy, the energy surcharge that we charge when we have summer camp programs. None of those happened. So we already know that income source did not come in. Refunds of prior year expenditures, that line item I increased by 30,000. We picked up some clean and green billings from entities that got out of the clean and green program and had to pay back taxes. And then for the last 10 years, we've been collecting 30,000 a year on a settlement for the EIT litigation that happened where money was distributed inaccurately throughout the county. 2021 is the last year of that 10-year settlement. So I know 30,000 of that'll drop off in the following year. I think there is still some clean and green money out there that I would think might still continue to come in. And then positive incentive programs, those are different miscellaneous income we get from Life Touch sales, things like that. I think that's pretty stable.
Darcy, this isn't a huge number, so I don't want to derail us and take a lot of time on this, but
Mhm.
why are the refunds declining so much?
The refunds of prior year expenditure,
Yeah.
you almost have to go back and look at what some of them are. There were some there. I mean, it's just really a catch-all. There have been things that have come through like insurance settlements or that just aren't anticipated from year to year. So I'd have to give you some details of what some of those larger years. Do you remember that there was a group of municipalities that did not sign on to this settlement, and then we had separate litigation going on, and they lost. So one of those years that's really large, they had to pay all that settlement in 1 year. So you almost have to look at it of what happened in each individual year. It just doesn't. There's nothing that consistent.
Yeah. Okay.
So that takes us the total of our local sources, where we budgeted roughly $36,700,000. I'm estimating that that'll come in about $90,000 over budget at this point. Next grouping are the state line items. We know our state subsidy for the year. We were right on track there because it was flat. The same thing with Ready to Learn. We're not hearing anything encouraging from state legislators about any type of increase in that line item. Next line item, tuition for institutions. This is subsidy we get for any children in our district that are with foster families. So it's based on numbers. That 70,881 that I'm expecting we'll get this year. That's based on known actual numbers from last year. And we just had 3 or 4 more additional foster students within the district. Next line item is the special ed subsidy. Again, not sure that we'll see any type of increase there from the state. Transportation subsidy, that will take a hit this year because last year we paid in, it's based on what we pay the contractors. So we paid less, so we get less of a subsidy. There's a 1-year lag. That should pick back up if we have a full year of transportation. That should pick back up by 82,000 in the following budget year. The rental payments, that's down a bit. Just there were some adjustments to some final rates with all of our refinancing. That'll pick up by $19,000 the following year. That's pretty much known. Next line item, we get a state subsidy towards our nursing services. That's very consistent. Don't see much change there. Same thing with the gaming revenue. That's been very consistent. Safe Schools Grant. This is a combination of stimulus funds where there was a health and safety grant and some of the safety grants we had applied for in previous years. Whether or not we will get these type of grants in a future year remains to be seen. We know that social worker grant that we have, that ends this year. So at a minimum, that goes away. The reason I reduced the estimated from 503,000 to 395,000 is because when we actually applied for those grants, some of that we've we're using over 2 years. So we'll only recognize it in the year we spend it. The other grant, the $23,677 on the next line item, we did pick up some additional special ed grant there. But again, those are huge concerns if there's no stimulus package, nothing else coming our way to deal with the pandemic.
So sorry, Darcy, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I hate to back up a line, but for that Safe School grant, I mean, that's basically money that we're allocating. It's already allocated. Like it's not money that we should even consider necessarily as budget.
I mean, it's allocated for spending this year, COVID related spending.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. But I guess the concern is I'm not sure some of those expenses may continue into next year.
Right. I mean, everything that but yeah. Yep.
Unless we're able to return to full in-person instruction.
So I guess how much of that money is allocated to additional staff, to things that we would have to cut for next year, not just cleaning supplies and plexiglass and stuff like that? I mean, how much of that stuff is any of that money allocated to additional staffing purposes for cleaning, or is that stuff we're going to have to be? I mean, is this
the one that we had the Cougar Academy staffing?
That's correct. It's taking one teacher position from 0.45 of a position to full-time, and then adding one special educator to Cougar Academy. Those funds remain for year 2 next year. So we have that ability to maintain those 2 positions. The other positions in Cougar Academy were restructuring staffing from full day K to half day K. So those positions we should be okay for.
Okay. And I guess just Darcy, overall, I mean, you really see the low end of that going and reverting back to zero?
I don't.
It hasn't been zero for 3 years prior, right. 2 years prior to COVID.
I'm optimistic that something will come through at the federal level.
Okay.
I mean, I just, hoping that something will break through at some point and Congress will agree on a package. And so I remain pretty optimistic that, but, at this point, there is nothing known to report.
And from a county perspective, the 6 superintendents, we are, through our superintendent of record, Dr. Demensik at Cornwall Lebanon, we are seeking a December meeting with our elected officials at the state level to just discuss where we're going to be at with budgets, et cetera.
And everything I've heard about the packages that were being discussed at the federal level, that, schools were being, the need to do another round for schools was very high at the top of the list. But again, I can't, there's nothing firm there.
Sure.
Social Security and retirement, I haven't made any adjustments. I'm not showing anything for next year until we know what we would have on the salary side. We get 50% of our actual Social Security expense in form of a subsidy and 50% of retirement. The rate is projected to go up for the retirement, but fortunately not like we've seen in past years. It's projected to go from 34.51% to 34.95%. which would have an impact on revenues of an increase of about 50,000. And the reason I increased Social Security for this year, we didn't get the full allocation. The auditors were not comfortable recording a receivable. The state did not release the full 50% last year. We're being told that it will be released, but the auditors were not comfortable with recording that in 1920 without having to note it as, you know, a past adjustment. So we accepted that. But if that comes through, then we'll pick up that extra 103,000 this year.
And Darcy, just clarify again, the 34.4 to 34.9% represents what?
The percentage of salaries that we pay our retirement contribution, the employer.
Right, so that's not anything on this revenue sheet. You're just talking about our PSERS contribution that we have to make.
Right, but if the rate goes up on the expenditure side, then and we get 50% in subsidy, the subsidy will go up as well.
But we still get screwed, for lack of a better phrase, of almost 0.25% of all salary costs that we have to pay to the state.
Correct.
Regardless of anything else.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to make this misleading by showing, oh, we're getting more money.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Just I think when you said about the 30, I mean, if we're going to bring that 34.4% up in the PSERS contribution, I just think people listening need to understand we don't control that.
Yep.
Other elected officials have the control over that and force us to pay it. They don't sit there and say we're going to keep that flat. We're always asked and we're always criticized here at our level for why do we keep raising taxes? Why do we keep doing this? And I don't see any of those people that come to those discussions making any comments about why are the state officials requiring us to pay hundreds of thousands more in money every year that we didn't vote for. We didn't vote for that increase. We didn't vote. We didn't get requested or asked on our feelings about paying all of that more money into a contribution that the state requires of us. And then we have to figure out how to budget and pay for it. Now, I just think if we're going to bring it up, I think it's important to keep in context. That's not something we bargained. That's not something we negotiate. That's not something you have any control over. The state and the elected officials of the state legislature and the governor tell us we must pay that. I just want to make sure that I think I'm saying that correctly. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those listening need to understand that those are the realities that we are left with to deal with at this local level sometimes, that I'm not sure always people have the actual context of the true challenges that we're dealing with. This isn't just about local real estate or local whatever and local incomes, and it's the state requires us to pay more money and not $5 or $10, hundreds of thousands of dollars that increase results out in an expenditure for us as a district.
Yeah, on the expenditure side, for every dollar that we're paying in salaries in this current year, we're paying $34.50 in retirement contribution.
That's right.
So the total state group, I'm just estimating that that'll be down about 60,000 compared to budget. The federal, I think we can just look at the federal line items in total. I think that's pretty stable. But there's CARES Act money in there of 253,000. Again, unless there's additional, there is specifically additional stimulus funds granted, that is not guaranteed for next year. And I'm working on trying to get some more FEMA money. We were successful last year to get $27,000 in FEMA money for 75% of what we spent last year in 1920 on PPE and disinfectant. We were successful in getting $27,000 from FEMA. I'm just about ready to finish up an application for a second round for $59,000. And hopefully we'll be just as successful there and pick up another 44,000.
I'll say kudos to Darcy, and I know there's other administrators that have helped her and support staff, but it's not that I've asked, but I'm not aware of other districts that have put forth the effort to seek those funds. So $27,000 is real money. So thank you to Darcy for those efforts.
Absolutely, thank you.
So just bottom line, total revenues with the budget of 54.5 million. And where I am right now is estimating that we're about 42,000 to the good. Again, 4 months in, but in a year that's been pretty tumultuous, I'm feeling pretty good about at least where we are. So I know that was a bit tedious, but just I thought it was important this year to spend a little more time going through, at least what kind of assumptions I'm using and getting input from you as well. And I did make notes. I will follow up with some more detail on the interest earnings.
Okay.
Thank you for the detail. I know it's not always a job that gets a lot of thank yous, but thank you, Darcy, for putting this together every year and giving us all this information. Any questions for Darcy about the revenues?
Nope. Just before we move on to the next item, item C, just want to remind everybody that if you want to participate in public comment, to raise your hand. Before the Act 1 available exceptions is complete. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you, Chris. Darcy, Act 1 available exceptions.
This is just a summary. I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about real estate. This is just updating our history of Act 1 exceptions.
Hello?
You can just scroll to the bottom of that, Bernie. There. Yeah, there you can just see for 21, 20.
I'm having a hard enough time.
21, 22, the index is the 3.8%. And if we used all the exceptions, we'd be eligible for a tax increase of 5.27%. And
Thank you for presenting it that way, Darcy. I know we've had some discussion, but I think that's the appropriate way to present it. And I think that's the context we should move forward in. So thank you very much.
That's all I've got.
Okay. Thank you, Darcy. Again, I think you have the least fun job of bringing all of these numbers and budget every year. You get put on the spot a lot for a lot of numbers and a lot of explanations but thank you, Darcy.
You're welcome.
No public comments. So I will turn it back over to you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir.
Hold on just a second here. John, what's the symbol there for next to Cougar Pride? On the participant list?
I think it's just like an applaud, like clapping hands.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just didn't want to make sure. So there, we don't have anybody registered. So, okay, we'll move on. I believe the next committee is Buildings and Grounds. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure we covered that one, boss.
We did. I meant to say staffing and administration.
Okay.
Hit it, Larry.
James here. Board policies, second readings. I think you can see they're all listed there. And Jim, do all the topics meet the material?
I did a spot check of 3 of them. So far, they all align with what I would think they should be.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
No
You bet.
change since the first reading.
Yes. Okay. So I guess next time we'll have a motion to pass those then, right?
That's correct. November 19th, there'll be a motion to approve the second reading.
Okay. And Bernie, you want to go over the next one?
Certainly.
Competition plan?
Yes. Preparing for the winter season, Mr. Weidler has provided an update for us. Basically, we're sticking to the same protocols as our fall sports, following the October capacity issues set by the Commonwealth. Moving indoors, face coverings required for all attendees, except for the participants. Social distancing of 6 feet. And then tickets, we're basically adhering to the same model that we had in the fall. For middle school and high school basketball, our recommendation is we stick to the 2 tickets per student athlete for home and visitors. And JV families at the conclusion of the JV contest would leave, and then the varsity parents would come in. And obviously, if you have a child or a student athlete that plays both, those parents stay for both. Swimming is one that Mr. Weidler has worked, I believe, with Coach Lyons on this. For us and the sheer number of swimmers and capacity needing the bleachers to space out our student athletes, there simply is not room for spectators in the natatorium. And then our recommendation for wrestling would be, again, the 2 tickets per student athlete, home and visitors. Maintaining ticket sales for those 2 ticket holders. And then reevaluating should there be a need on any guidance change from the Commonwealth. So pardon me while I turn my lights back on. So those are the only changes for the winter plan. To date, my knowledge, the mid-pen, as I'm not aware of any specific discussions on any type of alteration. I am aware that the LL League is still discussing potential changes to a winter schedule and how they may handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Bernie, I support the plan. I've said that before. I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this. I assume that we have not gotten feedback on things from the solicitor regarding some of the questions I had about you and our board president being able to work together and just making adjustments on things.
I have sent Mr. Connell feedback from our solicitor. It is lengthy. I believe the bottom line is a concern relative to the position that would place on Mr. Connell as our current board president, which ultimately then rests on the school district itself. That it would not be the recommendation of our solicitor to exceed guidelines established by the Commonwealth.
Okay. And my only other question then is, learning from the fall, is Mr. Weidler reaching out to the other schools in our mid-pen divisions and on our schedules so that we don't run into another situation again where we're allowing visitors to have passes, teams we play are not allowing visitors to come and giving their families more passes, and then we're left to be in a situation dealing with parents and families as to why are we letting them come here to watch their kid play when they won't let me come there to watch my kid play?
I will have to seek that from Mr. Weidler.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure with
that's something I would just like to put some effort in advance. Let's reach out to those other ADs that are on our schedule what is their plans that are being proposed, and let's try to get out ahead so there aren't inconsistencies. We don't have one program getting more, and you know, if we're going to say that XYZ school isn't allowing us to come as visitors, so we're not going to allow them, let's pass that universally up front for all programs, all items on the schedule.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, before we go on to early dismissals, again, anybody that has a question related to staffing and administration of the items that were discussed so far, please make sure you raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. Thanks.
Okay, Bernie, you want to do this one too?
Certainly. I have this document here in both a PDF and PowerPoint for your preference. Just brief tonight I'm just sharing with you, I'll use the word mini proposal, seek what additional information you as a board might desire before next week. But as you recall, we approved 5 early dismissals for the purposes of, I'll use the word COVID instructional preparation. 3 of those have been conducted. I believe they've gone incredibly smoothly. We surveyed our staff and had overwhelming feedback and what they did, and I'll share some highlights with you, and very 30,000-foot highlights of how they used that time. Tomorrow is our 4th day, and then not again until December 11th, based on the Thanksgiving break in there, would be our 5th early dismissal day. Wanted to highlight that the monitoring of students, I think, has gone very well. That those, we offered to families in need to, if they've exhausted all options, that their child could stay at school. Members of our support staff would help monitor the students' work completion in the afternoon. And that's ranged in the 4 elementaries, anywhere from approximately 7 students that stayed per building to upwards of 20, 25 students staying in a building. Something that we've been able to manage very well. Teachers, what have they been doing? Again, I think in our survey response rate, all but 2 teachers said that they felt these days were of value. 2 teachers said that they would prefer the students to be there. That one teacher's feedback was that I did a lot more in helping support other teachers based on my role, that it wasn't as beneficial to me. And another felt that they were okay and would just as soon have the student in class for the afternoon. All others felt that time was of incredible value, and it was what we thought. I mean, just the sheer planning and preparation time needed when they've had lost time. So that preparing the materials for parent pickup, scanning everything, getting it on their Google Classroom, our secondary teachers onto Schoology. Teacher collaboration, meetings. I know it's not what the day's intended for, but there were some IEP meetings held that if they weren't held then, they would have been held at other work days. Teachers grading, and again, I said some limited meetings. So when I look at the January, February timeframe, with days off, around January 18th and 25th, we have 2 Mondays off already as part of our calendar from an in-service day that's contractual in nature, and then Act 80 day. And then February having a day of no school and a snow makeup day. Also trying to minimize the number of Fridays. And again, sticking to, I think, the recommendation of this board of not going too far out when we have a lot of unknowns. Seeking the board next week to consider approval of 3 additional half days, 1 in January, 2 in February, that we would stick to the same time schedule, providing meals, etc.
Okay.
So any feedback, any questions, information that you would like to see? And then the remainder, I placed those slides in front of the previous, so it was there to give you the background as well, should you need to go back.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kepler.
Bernie, one thing I would ask, and it's not really specific to this plan, but so, and everything's different. I get that there's just so many variables of all this, but I hear sometimes you speak about your superintendent's meetings and talking to the folks in the IU, and here's what you're hearing. And again, I fully recognize that what I hear then is anecdotal, but I believe Mannheim Central, for example, if I'm mistaken, they're there every day, right?
I would have to look at their specific plan.
So I don't know what kind of data you get from all of them of what their models are, but I'd like to be able to kind of see that before a vote. Again, I realize and recognize I'm not going to sit there and say, well, this one's this. I mean, it's not trying to pick outliers. It's just, we look at these situations and we're trying to address a problem, and I'm trying to frame in my mind how much of a problem is it by, what are we seeing at others around us?
Sure.
So you mean a half a day, right, Jim?
Right. For our half a day, right? We believe there's this need and that there's the issue of the planning time and the teachers losing time. And I'm not saying this isn't the right way to fix it or the right way to address it, but I'd like to get some context of where our model puts us relative to others, where that situation puts us relative to others. Like I said, I think there's other ones very close to us, if not right next door, that are in person. And
so you mean going full-time in person rather than?
Yeah, I mean, we've never, we said we were going to look at this model of hybrid and we were going to take that as we go also, but we've never, ever reevaluated that after 2 weeks into school. And I understand where we're at with the things from the Department of Health and the Department of Education and everything else, but that's why I'm trying to say I'd like to see what others are doing, because we hear those things, but then I don't know that we're really getting a context and a broader scope of, are the others as concerned about that? Because from what I'm hearing, it seems like others won't be that concerned as maybe we're addressing it. And I'm not saying it's still not the right thing to address it. I'd just like to get some context. You know what I mean? Like, where are we on the continuum of things?
Yeah, what's their five school days? What's their instructional model?
Right.
Yeah, because you do have districts that their middle schools and high schools, unlike ours, have all kids in every day.
Correct.
Others that have AB like we do, but have one day that's fully asynchronous and et cetera. So you have a plethora of models across that continuum.
Right. And like I said, I'd like to see that to formulate for me whether there's other options to look at too. Like, is one full day asynchronous better and we get everybody in 4 days? I don't know, but I hear that's happening not too far, like maybe a mile or two from us. Like,
we also hear schools are closing, right? So that mile or two.
Again, that's the thing, right? We hear it anecdotally. I heard this. I'm saying the same thing. I realize I'm saying it anecdotally. That's why I'm saying if there is some way to see the whole IU, do you know what I mean?
But what I'm saying too, Jim, is it's fact that E-Town just closed, right? It's fact that Hershey closed. It's fact that LD closed.
And it's fact that Annville's in person, and it's fact that Mannheim Central's in person. Again, I don't want to deal with the anecdotes. I'd like to see the big picture. If I'm asking for something that's unreasonable or we can't get, I'm curious.
No, I think you can get it. I just don't know. You'll have 5 that do it one way, 5 that do it another way, and 5 that do it a different way. And I think, based on what, we think is best, I think either the model that we're currently under is managing the situation, or we go full time and then deal with a different situation, right? And I think that's the decision that ultimately comes down to us.
No, this is information, Mr. Kreiser and the board, I can provide to you in a week's time. That's not a problem.
I don't think Jim is being critical of what we're doing. I'm interpreting he's asking it, is there a better way? Could we improve what we're doing? Right, Jim? That's what you're...
Correct. You know, like I said, others, you know, you want to talk about others, like Lower Dauphin goes AB, and entirely off another day.
Yeah, every Wednesday's off.
We may get 13 different things. I realize that. I'd like to just see it on paper to see if any patterns emerge, or if we see any ideas that just give us some thoughts of other things we can do. Does this even need to be a half day? Should it be a half day? Right? I'd like to be able to learn from that, because I have concerns with the daycare situation. How are other districts managing that? What, you know, I think that trying to learn and just get that base of knowledge, I think, because again, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to 4 days in and 1 day. Why even come in for the half day?
Okay, Dr. Kepler, is that reasonable?
Certainly, I understand the question. I take no offense to the question. I think data and understanding what other models are going is useful information.
The schools that are going full-time, are their numbers rising? Do you know? Like, I think CD went full-time. You said Mannheim is full-time or something. Are their numbers going up at all? Do you know?
There are schools in both camps. There are, schools in Lancaster County who it started out, they have all students in each day at their secondaries, and they're going the opposite direction. Several of them in Lancaster County closing. There's a district in Lancaster County that is still looking to move to bring everybody back. I do believe part of our success isn't the right word. Our mitigation has been successful because of our AB schedule and having more social distancing than we would otherwise. But with that said, we're monitoring closely. Our failure rates are up at the middle school and high school. Because kids aren't in person, more kids struggle. So yeah, we believe it's balancing those two, and we're working on with those kids that are struggling to invite them in for 5 days. So we might see one more student at the secondary level, 2 more students in a class when you spread them across the grade levels, and then the various classes in each period of the day. So a lot of different factors, but it's all over the board. Yeah, I know I don't need to look at any other data to recommend to you that my recommendation would not be to bring all students in on a given day. I just simply don't believe we have any ability to social distance at all in our middle school, high school, based on class size. If I just say to the numbers to you, 150 sections of 30 to 32 students at our high school if we have every kid in. And we would not be able to do any social distancing in that case. So, but to Mr. Kreiser's question, certainly what other models are out there? Is there something else we can do? Part of bringing kids in.
Again, I'm just trying to understand bringing like Lower Dauphin's model. Would that help our teachers even more without creating more of a burden on families? I don't know, but I'd like to see is their model pretty unique, or are others doing it also? Because I only know of them in that situation.
Sure. No, they have I believe a full day that's asynchronous or remote.
They're going on Fridays, right? Fridays asynchronous. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Correct. You're either a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday student, right? And then Fridays all virtual.
Yes. Our thought there was by bringing students in, even that half day helps us meet free appropriate public education, or FAPE, particularly for our students with an IEP. We feel that's critical in meeting their specially designed instruction-based needs. Obviously, schools feel they
I
can.
get that, and then it raises my question of how are they figuring it out? I mean, wouldn't they be faced with the same challenges of the federal requirements?
Certainly, they might be planning for, and I can get those questions answered. Are they budgeting for additional compensatory ed services, or they'll give those kids more services outside of the regular day? That I don't
want to do that then. Sure. Yeah. Okay. No, and that's just the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, like trying to get. Again, it's always the sound bites, and you don't have much of the detail, and hard to formulate a framework.
No, absolutely. I think it's important for us to measure ourselves compared to other models and look at various points of that data, from transmission to instructional well-being of kids, or academic well-being of kids, social emotional well-being of kids. So.
Okay, good enough.
Hey,
Okay.
John, can you check my chat message to you?
Yeah, I replied back. I had somebody verify that they were able to raise their hand.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we don't have anybody that raised their hand, so we don't have any public comment. Okay, with that, we will close our committee meetings and move into our executive session. I assume everybody, do you need 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 5 minutes?
5 minutes, I think's fine.
Okay, so let's meet back up at 7:55. Appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.